this was really just a little slice, a little prototype to see if we could do learning in a non-linear way so that students could have access to the content and more learner choice, I suppose. And part of that was really the idea of having a lot more active learning in the digital space and coming up with a digital design pattern. So we did that in semester 2, and then semester 1, we've expanded that basically. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. So the first trial, the first prototype was really focused on information engagement. The other principles obviously are in there as well, but it was very focused on converting a lecture and moving away from a lecture to a more active online digital space. So how that kind of worked out basically was interesting, because what we started off with was really this idea of snakes and ladders. So Peter kind of envisaged a snakes and ladders type interface or game where students could slide up and down and access content according to their own preferences, but also to their own background. So for example, we've got there, you know, somebody might slide up from a video or down and across to a worked example because they might decide, I don't need these blue boxes, I don't need the semi-guided engagement, I'm already quite confident in that topic, or I've studied that before, so I might just skip right on to the review. And it allowed the idea was to allow different pathways through the material according to learners' own preferences and choices. And that included in that was giving lots of opportunities for students along the way to check to see if they really knew where they were going and if they really did know the content by lots of activity. And so there were a few design constraints along the way. As we all know and love Canvas, on the left-hand side, it is very linear. It is very sequential. So we really had to get creative and do a lot of manual coding to present a way to students to engage with content in a non-linear way. And I'll show you that in the proof of concept in a wee bit. So basically what that meant was a lot of storyboarding and redesign and learning design. And what you see on the right there is the page level design. So within, we had the top level navigation, we did a workaround and some coding to redesign it, and also at the page level. A part of that designing at the page level was to include things to design for authenticity, but also to embed social media feeds in to get students thinking about engaging with real world debates, basically, and outside of the constraints of learning management systems and the business school walls. We also put a lot of effort into designing for reflection and feedback so that students could actually drill into activities and test their understanding, because we know in lectures, obviously students are sometimes too shy to ask. And we put a lot of design effort into the videos to reduce cognitive overload. So they were very carefully kind of thought about the videos. They had key messages kind of reinforced by visuals, and in such a way that it was really chunked and broken down. And students actually really loved the captioning. Of course, they love the captioning, and also being able to speed it up, I have to say. So, and of course, that was all, you know, with the help of a multidisciplinary team. Now we have a really big team. It's fantastic. And the more people that we had on that co-design team, the more richness was built into it, really. This is actually a picture of not the BUSS1000 team, although Lilia, there you are. Bruce was teaching into BUSS1000, but I think that image says to me as well, a lot of our process was we had to work through things and grapple with a lot of things with a big team, and that was a really important part of the process. So I guess that whole idea of design was to improve it at scale. So that little prototype, that 1 week, has been really super important in feeding into the learnings of our proof of concept. But I'm just going to get rid of that for a minute. Again, just for the context, this is the 2019 Canvas site for BUSS1000. So the traditional format at the business school is using quick links. And within these quick links, you'll probably find some lecture recordings and some slides and so on. But it was very much a face-to-face delivery. So if I just quickly show you, week 7 would have a page or two with resources on it. Slides, learning objectives, readings. And then what we did for week 8 we only did that 1 week. So we had the design challenge of, we can't actually incorporate this into the original site. So we had a landing page. And of course, this was explained to students by the unit study coordinator and in tutorials, etc. But we also had this sort of placeholder page on Canvas where we had a video from Peter who explained the change and a launch button. Just FYI, not a lot of people actually engaged with the video, which is interesting. They just launched into the site, so, which is what we tend to do, I guess. This is the actual proof of concept site, the non-linear that I talked about before. And these are actually all topics within the week. So it's broken up and chunked into sort of this idea of learning, applying, and connecting. A lot of the design workshops that we ran with tutors and students was that there's a lot of frameworks and a lot of underpinning theory and principles in this business subject, and it's really important to be able to apply it. And students didn't feel they got enough practice with that. So typically, I can sort of drill into a page or two to show you, but I'll just go to your question first, Andrew, about, you know, if they feel like they've missed something, is there an opportunity to go back? So in the review stage, we designed a little activity where this matches towards the learning objectives that are stated up front. So every week has a learning objectives page, an introductions page. It's not called that because I guess for students, it's more about what am I learning and what will I learn? It's got a heading like that, and then a list of bullet points. So these match what they get at the beginning of the week. And students, when we looked at the data, they were actually engaging with this, because potentially you could just go through and tick these, right? It's not a mandatory activity. It is about learner choice. So students could say, oh yeah, tick, 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 I know all of this. And it wouldn't be a problem. It's not assessed, and we make that quite clear. But interestingly, quite a few students did sort of have a few unticked and then would check. And then there would be a link and a directions, well, if you're not confident doing this, you better head back to this page. So then it would redirect them back to the page that they could review. So that was one way that was covered off.
Great.
And then in the other sense, just in terms of sheer navigation, I guess, is down the bottom of every page in the proof of concept was sort of a handy quick links where they could refer back. And the idea was that the starred content was the absolutely must do. And interestingly, in the evaluation data, some students followed our starred recommendations and some students just went sequentially. So in any case, I guess that's the proof of concept in terms of the navigation. At the page level, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about that before I go on to 2020. And because I guess it's already 3:17, and I'm sure we won't go for the full hour. So let me just head on to a page. I've just sort of picked a page there. So for example, in the Petra Future presentation that I showed you before, one of the important things was to embed more authentic content and more active content in there. So this page replaced about 10 slides, very sort of static. Oh, actually, was it more? I can't remember now. But there were sort of very static slides showing demographic charts. So for example, in this one, students could actually then just run their mouse over, interact with the data, play with it, have a look at different data sets if they wanted to, see the sources behind it, go back to the chart, etc., etc. So it just provided a much more kind of interactive way to engage with that information. And then again, this was using gapminder.org, which is a really fantastic organisation that specialises in data literacy and looks at all sorts of content from around the world and puts it in data visualizations. Again, this was really important for the business topic in terms of future of business. You really need to know about global trends and global markets, and an important part of that is demographics, of course. And so at the page level, it was really important to really link it back to that idea that came up in the design workshops very, very strongly, was what are the implications for business? Why should I care about this? And what is all this content? You know, why do I need to engage with it? So students could actually put in sort of an answer in these sorts of self-check activities. They are not actually stored in a database anywhere. They're purely self-check. This idea that you might do that in a low stakes way in a digital environment. You might not ask that in a big lecture or even in a tutorial. And then if they wanted to, they could compare their answer with an expert answer. Again, I think in lectures and tutorials, often there is catering for students, and there is an awareness of students who might be struggling, but it's really hard in a large scale situation to cater for students who actually want to do more as well, who want to extend themselves in the other direction. So also built into the page level and into the learning design patterns is this idea of, if you want to explore more, here are some avenues.